to be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before the
All right, friends, welcome back to Biohacking University. And today I'm joined with Aaron and I'm joined with Ahmed. And today we're going to be going all into, I'll give themselves a chance to introduce themselves, but today we'll be going all into how an elite bodybuilder, Aaron, goes through kind of prep for his shows and how he preps his clients. Aaron, I would consider a very elite bodybuilder. He's a great coach, a high level coach, high level bodybuilder himself. He's around other high level coaches. You've probably seen him over on Steve's channel, who's a very respected voice in the PED space. So we thought we'd bring him on today to go through some of the key things that you should be doing if you're a bodybuilder going into prep, going over kind of everything, from your diet to your training to your nutrition, PED supplements, all into that. And of course, while everybody's different, there is some kind of key frameworks that we can use for this. So Aaron, if you want to introduce yourself real quick to the audience, I'm sure most of them already are familiar with you.
Yes, I'm basically John Cena's stunt double and his lab rat. They tested everything on me first before they got him big. Yeah, no, my name's Aaron. I'm a PCA pro bodybuilder. I've competed in the MPC as well, many times. Soon to be IFBB pro, fingers crossed. Just coming to the end of a prep now and a run of shows coming up. I've competed, I think, 13 or 14 times now, enough times to lose count. I've won 9 of those shows, multiple overalls, pro card in one federation, etc., etc. I'm just a bodybuilder. Love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Life is great. And on the back of that, I've been fortunate enough to help a lot of other people on their health and fitness journeys as well, and meet some good people in the industry like yourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Well, I appreciate it. And yeah, Aaron, we were talking before this that he gets a lot of John Cena comparisons, which now I look, I can't stop thinking about how much you look like John Cena. It's the haircut, the build, everything's very John Cena-esque. But yeah, Aaron's the real deal. And like I said, not only has he done it himself, he's coached people, he's been around top bodybuilding minds in the industry, really kind of some of the best. So Aaron kind of comes at it from all angles. And then Ahmed, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself too. You're also a very knowledgeable voice in the space. I think kind of up and coming. And so if you want to give yourself an introduction real quick.
For me, I'm the worst one who can introduce himself. But anyway, it's like 10 years. I was trying to study, trying to go through the phase of learning how to help people with anything related to their own biology, psychology, and physiology, and the connection between all the fine lines. Just I made my presence on the social media because I found out there is a lot of misunderstanding and of problematic voices that they are trying to bring down the knowledge and bring up all the scams, maybe some sales pitches and things like that. So I'm trying to educate people about their health, how they can take care of their health during any journey they want, like cognitive enhancements, PEDs, peptide health, especially health management. Because lately, in the last 5 years, I was focusing on diseased population, how we can resolve their problems, how we can stabilize their problems. I went through many unofficial medical trainings on the hospitals, on the surgeons, everywhere, clinics, kinesists, and that is basically most of the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ahmed's been doing, and he was taking me through it the other day. He doesn't talk about it a lot, but he was telling me how he's gone through actual training and courses within the medical system. So again, two guys, we have two great voices here. So I think it's going to be a really good, informative podcast with a lot of great, insightful insight again on how we should kind of prepare ourselves for a bodybuilding show. What's a good framework that we can use coming in? So Aaron, I'll start with you. So let's get with the training. So obviously training, you're going into a show, right? You're probably going to feel a little bit depleted. Maybe you don't feel you're not maybe, but you're definitely not going to feel as good as you do want to bulk. For yourself, for your clients, for guys who are going into a show, how do you kind of adjust the training? And of course, I'm sure it shifts and it adjusts based on if you're 16, 12, 3 weeks out. But what's kind of your mindset you use when dealing with training during prep based periods?
It's going to be a very similar approach most of the year round, to be honest. The only big variable there to really pay a bit closer attention to is going to be based around that sort of glycogen storage, what the input and output energy balance is looking like, and how we allocate volume accordingly. So let's say for a bit of a scenario here. So you're at the very beginning of prep. You're going to be at peak strength. You're still going to have plenty of food and things like that. The chances of you having to start looking at your volume and bringing that back is very, very rare. If you've got everything in place, you've had a really good start to prep, your health foundations are in place, you're not overly fat starting a prep, so you don't have to be ultra aggressive with your food. Then I think it puts you in a really good starting point for a prep. And let's fast forward, say, 16 weeks. Let's say, okay, we're at where I'm at now, 4 weeks out from a show kind of duration. Now the landscape changes a lot there. I know we're skipping over a lot of stuff in the meantime, but just to give a little bit of a template here, this is the sort of times where we're really going to be paying attention to a lot of fatigue markers. We're going to be correlating your training output and volume along with your food intake, your cardio output, and looking at all of the metrics. You're going to be paying attention to the metrics and the trends throughout prep. And you're going to start seeing very early warning signs quite early on in prep. You're going to know if an individual is typically suffering from sleep, or maybe you notice digestive issues, mood swings. There's a lot of markers that we can look for that correlate with certain types of fatigue, and that's essentially what we're looking for. And we're going to allocate enough volume to get the appropriate amount of stimulus to retain muscle. So when we think about training in a prep, you have to think about what the goal is. Now, I believe if you give yourself enough time to prep, let's call it a 20-week prep. The first half of that prep isn't really prep. The chances are you're probably still going to have more than enough food to have really good progressive movements in your training programming, and probably potentially be picking up a lot of muscle in that first half of prep. Let's assume that there's pharmacology in place. That changes the landscape very much. Um, there's a good chance you're going to be picking up some muscle, and your training is going to be very progressive. You're going to be feeling great, looking great, and probably making some solid progress there. At some point in that prep, the you're going to be looking at, okay, we have a certain amount of time now leading up to a show. We have to start prioritizing more fat loss. That becomes the primary goal at that point. So you kind of move out of that like recomp kind of half prep, half growth phase at the beginning into, okay, let's really knuckle down into fat loss phases here. And that's when we might start leveraging more of a caloric deficit, with maybe some more output as far as cardio is concerned. And that's when we might start backing down on a couple of different variables there. One being volume. I plan all of my training kind of around the RP app, as far as the training programming is going. So I really I'm very, very biased towards doing things in mesocycles, 5 or 6 week mesocycles, and deloading every, say, sixth week. This is just going to ensure that you never accumulate any unwanted buildup of fatigue, various different kinds of fatigue. And then that allows you to continue progressing really well. And those little short breaks throughout those preps would usually come along with a bump in calories as well. So again, that gives you that nice little metabolic boost. We take care of any potential downregulation of thyroid, things like that. Have you very, very rested, feeling fresh. Everyone should come out of a deload feeling like, yeah, I feel great. I feel rested. I feel like I needed that. Now I can hit that next 5 weeks really effectively. And you eliminate a lot of the common problems that we hear about in prep, which is that lethargy, the brain fog, the just the chronic, like, oh, I'm suffering through prep. I think the landscape of prep now has changed very much with the tools that we have available, that the idea of suffering through prep is different now. Yes, prep is going to be very hard. Yes, you are doing something very, very extreme. But the tools that we have available, if they're leveraged properly, can mitigate a lot of the common side effects that I believe play a huge role in the training approach. Whereas training towards the end of a prep, you might see someone really having to back off very aggressively just to manage like these really high levels of sort of chronic fatigue buildup or glycogen depletion. Whereas if you kind of manage those things throughout prep, a bit proactively, a bit preemptively, then I think you can get away with keeping a very high level of performance and progressive overload throughout prep until the very end, where what I would be looking to do is look at my time efficiency. So I'm 3 weeks out from a show now. I'm still in a mesocycle. I'm coming up to week 3 of a mesocycle. My mesocycles get progressively higher in volume and intensity as the mesocycle continues. And you might think, well, you're getting ever closer to a show. You're 3 weeks out. Shouldn't you be backing off? Well, yeah, maybe if I had just done 12, 15, 16 weeks of training nonstop with no breaks, I would probably be in a very different mindset right now, feeling like crap and just dragging myself into a show. And then hopefully that last deload week slash peak week is enough to drop the fatigue. When in reality, there's nowhere near enough time to drop all of that fatigue that's accumulated across a whole prep, especially if someone's been very aggressive with the dieting side of things. So my approach with the training, the programming, very much aligns with the food, but having those mesocycles in place with frequent deloads allows you to continue a very high level of output, quality output. And that I think has a massive positive effect on the physique, the look, and how you feel getting closer and closer to a show. And then the only thing I really change now is because my carbohydrate intake is very low. Like I diet, my calories go low, low. Like I can get very low and get away with it. Some people don't have to. It's a metabolic thing, right? There's a very much a genetic factor. But for me, I have to go pretty damn low in calories to dig off that stubborn fat. And the way I mitigate overtraining in that scenario is by having very time efficient workouts. So I might split my workouts into an AM and a PM workout. So I have that big gap in the middle of the day to recuperate, replenish, and rest. And then my AM workout might only be 5 or 6 sets. And then the PM workout might only be 4, 5, maybe 6 sets, but with smaller muscle groups. So my primary muscle groups will always be in the AM when I'm more awake and more fueled. I might then start to add in things like intensifiers, like supersets or myo rep sets and things like that. Not for any other, there's particular reasons what there's probably a lot of benefits that we don't fully truly understand yet about metabolite buildup and things like that from these kinds of approaches to training. It's still a very unknown area that we're kind of figuring out. It seems anecdotally that there are benefits there, but there's a time and a place for it. Whereas the time efficiency of doing these intensifiers, that cuts about 20 minutes off of a workout for me because I'm not doing 4 or 5 straight sets for my last few exercises with 5 minutes rest in between because I'm battered and I need those long breaks. I can condense that into a superset or a giant set or a myo rep set and get the same amount of volume and fatigue buildup in a much shorter amount of time. So if I've only got 50 grams of carbohydrates to play with pre-workout, that's going to be depleted real quick. So I have to really get as much out of that 30 to 45-minute window as possible. So in order to do that, I can condense my volume using these intensifiers. So that's why you might see me use those kinds of techniques later in a prep. It's all around time management, volume management, making sure that you're not pushing too much beyond what fuel you have to use. And that way, again, you mitigate a lot of that fatigue buildup that you don't really want to have to be. What basically I want to do is avoid digging myself into such a deep hole and only giving myself a week before a show to one, drop fatigue, two, carb load and somehow improve my physique, and do all these other manipulations that might be in place all
Mhm.
within 1 week. It's a big ask on the human body to be able to do that, and then to assume that you're going to look your best. I think there's a bit of a better way to give yourself a much better runway into that peak week by mitigating a lot of that fatigue build up by just managing your volume appropriately, your training time appropriately, and having regular deloads, every sixth, seventh, eighth week, maybe for some people. Everyone's a little different, but I think that's a great approach to it. So that's how I approach my training. And as far as just general volume and frequency, like what's my style? People say, oh, do you do RP style? There's no such thing as an RP style. It's just an intelligent approach to training with slightly different terminology. But people get caught up on the terminology. Oh, a mesocycle. It sounds all scientific. It's just another word for a training block. It's just a word. So don't get caught up on the words. It's the same thing as you're already doing. It's just a little bit more. We just approach it in a little bit more of a fine-tuned way. That's all it is. And I'm a big believer in high frequency. People always say, "Are you low volume or high volume?" My answer is always, I am appropriate volume, and that's it. Appropriate volume with as much frequency as you can recover from. Happy days.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the key one of the key issues that um things like the Renaissance periodization app kind of address really well is more so just about number one, planning your training out better. So you're not just mindlessly for 12 weeks keeping the same volume, not going harder, not deloading, not manipulating the variables. So planning and then the efficiency of your workouts, I think is important because a lot of people, get caught up in the whole okay, I'm in the gym for 3 hours. I did all these sets of chest. I'm having such a good workout. When the reality is that if you're in the gym for 3 hours, the quality of your volume is probably not that good because if you're going hard and if you're utilizing, things like you were saying, like drop sets and you're utilizing proper tempo and form, you're probably not going to be able to go and train how you train for say 3 hours in the gym for 15 weeks straight without running your body into the ground. So I think just the planning and just getting a higher quality of volume over just, how much volume can I do in the gym? How long can I stay in the gym for? Is a much, much more intelligent way to train. Ahmed, do you have any questions regarding kind of Aaron and Aaron's training that he kind of utilizes and goes with during the prep phase?
The good thing that you have already, like, give everything around, let's say, a plan for anyone who's trying to come into the first time prepping himself or working with a coach. He can literally take all the notes that you've already structured, the volume, how you start from a high volume and high intensity with the high food, and then you progress down to match the food with the intensity that you have. And then the good thing is the fatigue management, because this is the most, the most problematic thing with anyone is trying to prep. They always get themselves into the overtraining and over fatigue that it will not be able to mitigate it at the end of the prep. As you said, uh, as a human body, you cannot, even with any assistant that you have, with all the PEDs, you cannot mitigate all the accumulation of fatigue starting from the prep to the end. You cannot do that in 1 week. So it's better to can have these blocks and these major cycles and deloads and everything. So it was a very good structure for everyone to can at least know how they can take their training to the next level during the prep. Which I don't think that there's any more question. He's literally give them everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good. And I think Aaron, we can toss it up too, has a code with Renaissance periodization too. To sign up for their monthly. It's a really good price. And again, that'll if you watch that what he just said, his segment, and then you get the app, I think you'll be pretty well set up for your training.
It really is. Like I don't want to sit here and plug the app all day long, but it really is that good. It's
Yeah, it is.
it's asking you all the questions in real time that any good PT or coach should be asking, and it's making those adjustments in real time, which no coach can really do that because they're not really with you in real time all the time. And you know what PTs are like in the gym a lot of the time. Yes, there are great PTs, but there's also a lot of not so great
Yeah.
PTs that instead of asking you like, how was that? What were the pumps like? What was the workload like? How do your joints feel? How do you, on a rate of scale of 1 to 10, where was the sort of, overall output for that muscle group for the day? They're not really asking those questions. They're like, did you get a pump? Feels good? Or they might just be like, hey, did you see this video on TikTok? And not paying attention whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the app kind of is a guaranteed hyper focused coach in your pocket all the time. And the algorithm that those guys have built is second to none. No other app has that algorithm. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused is they think it's just another app to track your sets and your weights. No other app takes that data and efficiently, effectively programs you week by week moving forward, session to session, real time updates based on your real time feedback, like any coach would. So it really is worth its weight in gold. It's such a good app. I've made an incredible amount of progress using it, and it's really helped me level up my own personal programming that I give to my clients. Because and it takes a little, sometimes people to switch from one style of training they've been doing for years or whatever to another. Some people, it takes them a little bit of a push and a nudge to get them to buy into it. But one thing that one bit of feedback, well, not one bit, there's a couple of bits of feedback I always get is one, they always go, it says just 2 sets for this exercise. Is that enough? And I'm like, yeah. Because if you watch how we're training and how we're executing, when you know you've only got 2 sets to make it count, you're going to make it count. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, those 25 set workouts I've been doing, most of them are trash. What percentage of effective reps and sets were you really getting? Not a lot. And you only have to look in the mirror to see that sometimes. A lot of guys will say, I've been training, I've been doing this crazy split, 5x10s, 5x10s, and all this for all these different muscle groups. And I've been doing it, I've been going hard for 3 years, yet you look exactly the same. And now you're looking for something new, which is great that you're looking for something new. You recognize there's a problem and you recognize there's a necessity to learn something new and progress in a new direction. But for some people, it is such an extreme different direction. It can be a little daunting and takes a little extra understanding and just a little bit of belief in the system. But there are some incredible athletes making some of the best gains of their life by really buying into a much more intelligent approach to programming. But it's all off the back of good execution. Like you said, you could, with the way that we train, that really good dialed and make every rep count with controlled tempos, proper execution, setup, and everything to really make sure we're getting the most amount of stimulus possible on the target muscle group. If every one of your sets and your reps is nailed like it should be, you ain't surviving 3 hours.
Nope.
Not a
Yeah.
chance. I barely survive an hour.
Yeah.
And I've got a few extra supplements in place to help me along. And it's still like, there's no way I would survive a 2 hour workout with this kind of execution and intensity. So when people say, oh, they associate hard training and intensity with just these ridiculous amounts of volume. And it's like, no, you need a different switch of mindset there. And when you do, I can promise you one thing, and that will be legit real results that you can actually see. And the data is there to prove it as well. There's no question marks.
But yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna be down in Vegas this summer, so we'll see how I fare during a workout with you and maybe Jared. We'll see how I do. Yes, if I survive, we'll see. But I mean, it is true, and that's the kind of red flag when people say they can train for 3 hours. It's always raises a question in my mind because, like you said, if you do 2 hard sets, and I know people freak out about that, but 2 hard sets, and again, you're focusing on tempo, you're focusing on the form, you're really pushing, maybe you get some partner assisted reps at the end. You have someone, like I said, you have a good training partner, and they can just go and watch you and Jared train on your blogs. I mean, that's a great example. It's hard, intense training. You won't survive for 3 hours. So I think we covered the training part pretty well. So let's jump to diet because I feel like diet during prep, there's a lot of different ideas. And like again with training, the reality is that everyone's body responds differently to dieting while on prep. So if you want to kind of give again your same kind of structure for how you do dieting on prep, again, I know it changes as you get closer to the show or the competition. But how do you structure it? So again, I know the first few weeks are going to be more mild, but then, when we get more intense, are you a guy who likes to drop carbs altogether? Carb cycling, is that necessary? Does it depend on the athlete? What's kind of your framework for dieting from like we did with the training? So weeks, 16 to 20, all the way kind of closer to the show.
So I'm a fan of carb cycling one way or another. So all the time people will most likely have a training day diet and a non-training day diet, just to set up the basic carb cycle with those 2 days. And that's going to be essentially trying to figure out your net weekly input and making sure that we leverage a little bit more fuel via carbohydrates on your training days around the training window to maximize performance as much as possible. The main goal throughout the entire prep, as far as food and training, that correlation is going to be muscle, uh, preserving muscle, right? So as long as there's enough fuel going in to get that job done, the rest of it's kind of dictated by the individual genetics and responses. Some people require a ridiculous amount of food to allow their body weight to drop at a reasonable weight. Because yes, fast weight loss is like, wow, it's exciting, it's great. But if that goes too fast, that usually can run into you can run into a lot of issues that you kind of want to mitigate. So we're kind of looking at you can have set some framework number goals, and that's just say, okay, well, we've got 20 pounds to lose over 20 weeks. Okay, let's set the goal for a pound a week, and we will adjust your deficit to hit those targets. But to just hit those targets, making sure that our priority is that training output. The last thing we want to suffer is that training output until we're getting very, very deep into prep, where we can still mitigate that with, like we said before, the volume and deloads and things like that. But as far as food is concerned, to be honest, it's not really that complicated. It's more just let's remain in a healthy deficit that keeps things moving along. And the things I would be looking for is that output. So someone who's got a ridiculous metabolism and they're 4 weeks out from a show and still cramming in 3,500 calories, like fantastic. Like if you've got crazy genetics and I'm jealous. You're gonna have a hard time in the off season, that's for sure. But in prep, happy days, you get to eat a lot of food, and that probably allows you to stay quite full and look good. You probably won't be going very flat, although people will say going flat is a part of that process. It kind of depends. Like I think it's a very individual response. Some people require a lot of supersaturation days with a high day put in maybe every third, fourth, or every fifth day, depending on how long it takes for their body to downregulate symptoms of slower metabolism, weight loss plateaus, performance plateaus. A lot of the time, some of the initial things you'll see is mood swings when you're talking to clients. You'll notice from one day to another, they're just like completely different personality. And you can see it's really hit them hard just overnight. And it can happen that quickly as well.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a gradual trending thing, and it's like, okay, you're all right. You can hang in there. You can keep digging. Like I'll tell you when it's time to sort of, we'll take a couple of days off and put a bit of food in and bring you back to life. Whereas some guys, it can just overnight, and they're just like, I feel like a zombie today. Like I can't function. So then that would allow me the time frame where I'd be like, okay, well, we need to get ahead of that day by one day or maybe 2 days. And that's where I would maybe program in a high day so I can upregulate all of those systems, allowing them to continue progress without hitting that wall. I want to get close to that wall, but I don't want them to hit it because I still want them to be able to feel good and perform to the best of their abilities and still keep that fat loss going. So as long as the weight loss over, say, a week is still hitting those targets, maybe that is just a consistent amount of calories across every day to hit those targets for an individual. Maybe it's super low non-training days, low to moderate training days, and a very high day. But the net total for the week might be exactly the same. But that person, because of their individual metabolic reactions and adaptations, some people need that high day. Some people don't. And I think a lot of the behavioral things can dictate that as well. So if you know that person has tendencies to binge and lose control, if they're given a little bit of freedom on food, high day might not be a great choice. A high day might just tip them over the edge and they lose their mind. And the next message you get was, I lost control on high day and I ate 7 pizzas and 4 Dairy Queens and it's not looking good. If there's any risk that that might be a thing, then a high day is probably not a good approach for that person. You might want to just give the prep a little bit more time and have a higher set food point and bring that down a lot slower. Time is the essence there. If you know someone can dig really, really hard, really fast, and not suffer and keep recovering with a little deload and a few days at maintenance calories every now and then okay. It's like, well, we've got 12 weeks, but we can definitely get you in shape because you can suffer and you have great diet discipline and you're just one of those guys that can suck it up and deal with it and it's no problem. So it's very much an individual basis thing, but essentially the framework there is time, how much fat needs to come off, and what are those individual needs as far as the deficit to meet those targets week after week after week. At the same time as maintaining really good performance, because if performance in the gym is suffering at like 10 weeks out, you're in a bad spot. You don't want to be in that spot. Really, you want people having to manage that training because of the food at a very late stage in prep, very, very late. And that's, if we do the things we said before, that should be attainable. But then we bring into the play now in the last year or two when we're talking about sort of GLP
Mhm.
input, that the framework has changed all over again because that is now those people that maybe really suffered with high cravings, high hunger, were able to utilize some further tools there that now put them in a whole different category of prep client. So the game is changing for sure, but essentially that's the sort of things I'm looking for when not just kind of trying to think about a template for a client in a prep, but also the real time auto regulation that needs to happen based on their feedback. And that's all off the back of really good, frequent, good communication.
Yeah. And that's why I tell clients too. I tell them, prospective clients or whoever it is, I say, even if, you're not gonna work with me after this call, I say, if you're gonna go through a prep, find yourself a coach who communicates with you because there's no way that any coach is going to be able to properly predict and give you a cookie cutter plan for how to prep, right? So that communication needs to be frequent. And then as a coach too, it's about learning your client, learning how they respond. Because like you said, I mean, there's two types of people. There's the people who are going to be able to lose weight, like there's no tomorrow kind of no matter what they do. And then there's the people who are going to drop calories super low and still struggle to lose weight. So it's just the balance and kind of learning your client's genetics, how they respond to things, not only their physical, but like you said too, their mental genetics. And how strong is their willpower? Do they struggle with cheating on their diet? Do they struggle with the kind of mental battle of going super low on calories? Can they handle it? Can they not? Because again, some people are different. So you're right. I think that's again, if you're someone and you're looking, obviously, Aaron coaches, Ahmed coaches, but if you're looking, to do a prep, definitely make sure you have a coach who's very communicative because it's those constant little tweaks throughout prep which really are going to be the biggest drivers and the most important things. Because I really think prep is made throughout the whole prep. It's not in the final week. A lot of people get so hyper fixated on, oh, last 3 days of prep, what can I do or what can I tweak to just look crazy? And they want to do all the water manipulation and all that stuff. And that's always for some reason the hyper focus of people. But I really think prep is made or broken
I mean, if you do
within
it correctly, you shouldn't have to do any of that.
exactly.
Should be
Yeah.
just another day in the
Yep.
office. You walk on stage because you're already ready, give
Yep.
or take a little bit on the day of the show, maybe, or the day before. But like you said, the main foundations there are built off of just good communication and someone who's probably had enough experience where there's so much trial and error in a prep, especially for
Yep.
a first time prep. But there should be more trial than error.
Yep.
That comes with experience. You've seen
Yes.
enough of these preps and enough of these common problems so many times that you can usually make the right call based on what you know about that client. Sometimes it might take a little bit of that didn't really work. We need to switch and try this. But you should be able to communicate and do those things very, very quickly and effectively.
Yeah.
So if you're only getting to talk to your coach once a week and they're not available to ask questions, a week is a long time in a prep where if
Yep.
you're doing something that's not working for a full week and you're not able to communicate that, that's a week gone. And
Yep.
those weeks, they
Yep.
count down real quick when you get closer and closer to a show.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to be making sure that whoever you're working with is available all the time. And that is the realities of a good prep coach, I think, or any good coach in general. You should be accessible because you don't want lingering question marks. Even if you're doing the right thing and it's working, you should still be able to ask questions about, well, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this? Can you explain it to me? Because that little bit of peace of mind is going to give that person more confidence in doing what you've told them to do. And that in itself is going to produce more results. Whereas if you get one bullshit email once a week or once every couple of weeks that says, okay, cool, all good, yeah, just, drop this to this, do this, that this many weeks out, we start using this, this many weeks out, we do that. That's just massive red flag. I've worked with coaches like that, supposedly high up, good coaches, but the reality is they're only high up because they scaled very fast. They got loads of
Exactly.
clients. They built a name for themselves, but they can't actually produce and provide a good high communication level of service. And then sometimes the blueprints work and they're the ones you'll see on Instagram, but you don't see the 60, 70% of clients that failed on because they weren't paying attention. That's business. Yeah. It's marketing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I mean, again, to people, like I always tell people too, to think kind of logically about things. I mean, if you have a high level, and again, I'm sure there's very good coaches who have big followings out there, but if there's a coach who has 3 million Instagram followers, are you going to be getting? And he probably has 1,000 clients. Are you going to be getting that constant communication? I tell people maybe sit down, talk to him, but probably not, right? Because realistically, you're not going to be able to juggle that as a coach, right? So I always tell people, just do your due diligence in finding a coach because it's very important. They're taking your psychology and your biology into their hands, especially if you're enhanced. So, Ahmed, do you have any questions or kind of clarifications regarding the dieting while during prep for Aaron at all?
I think like Aaron always put the structure for everyone to can coach themselves. They can have the plan well, start from start to finish. And I think nothing here to us, but I think we can take the conversation into a different perspective. Like we talk about diet, we talk about training, and later on we're gonna talk about PDs and all the assistance that people can take to can manage and make the prep different. But it is just two things that we I think shouldn't be neglecting, which is number one is the environment. Like I think that Aaron moved from UK to Thailand and from Thailand now to Vegas. So for anyone who's prepping for a show, I think that always the environment around them is playing a huge role in their mental stability, in their adherence to the diet, the gym, if it's far, if it's close, the gym buddies that they can be always helpful for them, treat them up, take their hands and push them through the prep. This is a very huge aspect that no one can neglect that. From the pro bodybuilders that I really know, from the Egyptians that they are now on the pro league or even on the Olympia stage. Whenever I talk to some of them just be hyper focused, close on themselves, and go to any camp, and then they isolate themselves from families. Others they prefer to stay with family because families can give them a push mentally. So with iron moving places, how could you manage those?
That's such a good point. Like figuring out if someone is actually in a position to start a prep. That's number one thing. There's a few things I always ask people. That's a good one. Like ask some personal questions about their life. If someone's going through a horrible breakup or they're having a lot of stress at home, they're not sure if they're going to lose their job next week, their cat just died, they've got family members going through illness and sickness, like any of those things, now is not the time to do a prep because it's just not. You need to be really present in all ways. And if you're sidetracked by anything at all, it's going to affect your prep for sure. Prep is a very selfish thing. It's a very selfish endeavor. It's amazing and it will benefit your life and everyone around you after the fact. But during prep, it's a very demanding thing and it's going to have to take a big chunk of your life. So there's a few questions I ask. One, are you financially stable enough to actually get through a prep? Because if financial stress is the killer, right? That is the one form of stress that is going to hit you faster and worse than anything else. So, financial, are you sorted out? Health, let's check this full health works. Let's make sure you're actually in a healthy position where, you're not already dealing with something that needs to be fixed first. like Ahmed said, the environment. Where do you live? Are you actually happy? Are you in a happy position where you have everything you need in place to have a really good, productive, positive prep? These are huge questions that need to be addressed before even thinking about it. Because sure, you'll be on Instagram, you'll see someone on stage, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I really want to do that," and people will jump into it, and they'll jump into it quick. And there's plenty of people that will just be like, "Yeah, sure, you can do a show. I'll take your money." But the reality is, you're probably either you need maybe a good 6 to 12 months of actually learning how to bodybuild first before doing a prep, or the environment, your situations, your personal life probably needs to be addressed. You know, if your wife is 6 months pregnant, I wouldn't be jumping into a prep. You're going to be in the rough end of that stick, that's for sure.
Yeah.
These are really, really essential points. Yeah, that's really good things to bring up.
Yeah. No, that's and I think that I mean that was a really good point, Ahmed, because again, like you see how your external environment will negatively impact you. And I wasn't even there was a client I had who wasn't even prepping for a show. He was just cutting, and his girlfriend was for some reason would get angry at him when he was cutting. And so he'd do his check-in and he'd say, "Oh, this week I had to go off plan because me and my girlfriend got into a fight that I wasn't eating out at dinner, or she was upset that I was spending too much time in the gym." And so it's funny, like, it's not funny, but it was funny to see how, if your support system isn't good or your external environment isn't good, it will bring you down, and if you have people around you who are going to bring you down, whether it's mentally or like I said, they're gonna derail you from your diet, it will kill your progress. Again, some people are strong enough to not let it bring them down, but my thing is like, why even put yourself in the position to risk, derailing your prep or derailing your cut or derailing your journey and not having yourself around supported people. And I think that's a good lesson for life because I think again, if your goal is to do a prep and it'll make you happy and the people around you or your environment, doesn't support that, it might be time to have some introspection and look at, who you're surrounding yourself with and what your environment is. So that's a really, really important one. Yeah.
100%. And a good, honest coach that's actually invested into your life and progress should recognize and pick up on these things and give you some legit advice as well. Like, this is not something I brag about, but I've walked people and encouraged people to go through breakups and divorces because I don't want to be the other guy who causes divorces. But there's been situations that are so obvious that these people are in such unhappy, unhealthy relationships. None of them are supporting each other's goals and lives. They're just together for security reasons, family pressure, whatever it might be, or they're just too scared to confront the truth. And I've helped a few people go through this. And the end result every time has actually been both partners contacting me and saying, "Do you know what? Thank you. Like we just needed someone to actually be honest with us. And now we're both way better off for it. We're in a great place. We're friends, but we can now focus on ourselves and our lives. And we're not in a position that we were in where we were unhappy." And sometimes it sounds dramatic and drastic, but sometimes the reality is these things need to happen. And like you said, if the support system is not there, then you really need to change your support system. If the people in your life aren't supporting your goals and your dreams, you probably need new people around you.
Yeah. And I think a prep is a good kind of litmus test too, because I mean, it's not again, it does put a burden on the people around you for sure, but it's one of those things where it's like if someone's not supporting you to do a bodybuilding show or a bodybuilding prep and you really care about it and you're passionate about it, when you have a business you want to start or when you want to go back to school and get a degree, chances are they're not going to support that either because then they're going to have the same excuses. Oh, you're spending so much time at school, you're not with me. So again, I think it's important if your partner or someone as kind of silly as it may sound, like, oh, they're not big on you doing a bodybuilding show, I think it really can be an indicator that they're not supporting you and maybe not the right person for you to help you achieve your goals. Because as we, create these relationships, you should be elevating each other, not pulling each other down. And Ahmed always talks about that too. Like, when you're coaching people, we're going off topic a little bit, but I think it's totally fine. But when you're coaching people, you're more than just hey, I'm giving you diet advice. Hey, I'm giving you training advice. You, in a lot of ways, become their therapist, their counselor in a sense, right? You're going to be the guy, you build that trust, you build that bond, and you're going to be the person where they're going to say, and I've had tons of clients, and I'm sure you guys have had too, where they come to you with kind of personal issues and they say, hey, I'm struggling. what should I do? So I really do think as coaches, if you're going to take on clients and you're going to work with people, it does kind of become your role in a sense and Aaron, you mentioned this too, to kind of help them through if they're having, personal issues or if they need insight on things. Because again, if they're trusting you with their biology, which is very personal to them, to me, you should also be helping them through personal issues and whatnot.
Absolutely. And that goes both ways. It's not just like telling people to break up. It's
Yeah,
also
of
telling
course.
people like I know lots of great clients that are in really good, solid relationships where they're very supportive, and it's amazing to see. And there's times where I've got to tell my guys or my gals, like, you need to put a hold on things and you need to be there for your partner right now. They're going through some tough shit. You need to be there. They're there for you during your thing. It's now time to sort of take a step back. I know you love your training, but we've got lots of time. There's plenty of shows to come up. Now, right now, you need to pay attention and be supportive of whether it's their partner going through some exams or whatever it might be. It's something serious. So you do end up being a big part of people's family and their lives.
Yeah,
That's the
definitely.
reality of it. And I love that part. I love that. Like, it's very, very rewarding because it gets to a point where, you're getting pictures of like family outings and stuff, and like they tell you more and more personal stuff about their lives and their kids. And I get pictures of newborn babies and stuff like that on the day babies are born. And that guy has thought about me and wanting to share that with me. And it's like, that's incredible. And you don't know how much of an impact you can have on someone's, not just their physique and their health, but their entire families as well. Like, if you do things right and you really make sure people are doing things the right way and they're happy and they're doing something that is genuinely benefiting their lives, it's going to benefit everyone around them as well. And that's a cool thing to be a part of. And like you said, if you really want to test out if someone's the right one, do a prep. If they're still there at the end of it, you got to keep them.
Yeah, yeah. And for any women watching, if your boyfriend starts working with Aaron, be careful. He might cause a breakup. I don't know. Just be cautious. No, I'm joking, but yeah, no, super super important stuff there. And like I said, Ahmed, you've talked too about how you've personally a lot of your clients too. You said you kind of become like a therapist or a counselor for them and what you do with them.
And it was like it is started from prepping people. I started to think more about the situation that they get themselves into it, about being in this kind of the fight or flight mind system. Always put them in a very fragile state that anyone can give them any comment, any statements. They will be very, very sensitive to it. And to be honest, I always take things to an extreme level. So once I started to watch this out, I said, why not just to go and get a diploma on CPT, DBT, and family counseling. And when I went into uh either the diploma and then see how this massively can change the whole mindset, I always try to get into my clients, not personal life if they didn't want me to go through it, but at least trying to make things in the perfect way for them to can achieve their goals. If you couldn't get too much details from the clients, definitely there's something that it will be playing in the background and you don't know anything about it. And then you see the results all over the place and you cannot manage how to analyze those. So I always tend to like ask people, if you are comfortable enough, just let's put aside all these problems that you are having, and let's talk about your life, your job. Some people even it came to a point that I give them a business advice. Okay, you can start doing this. You can start to put some money aside, and then you can just invest those in this area, and then you are trying to give them the tools that they lack, if it's a knowledge or experience or whatever. Because also you can get younger clients, like they are early trainers and they are trying to achieve so much. So you can just hold them from being in that digging deeper, and then they still have enough time and enough learning curve to can go through it. So I get deeper with that, and that helped me so much. This is why also as Aaron said, you have to be like be a better coach. the same as you want someone to coach you or someone to be personal to you. You seem to be personal to them. Try to give them everything you have. Try to give them everything. This will bring your people number down, but at least the quality that you deliver is like it is different than other people that we know.
Yeah, for sure. You want people to be better people at the end of this, right? So,
Yeah.
a scenario there might be like, well, okay, so let's say we've got a guy, he's got a young son, wife, busy, fairly busy working schedule, all of this stuff. And you ask some questions and so well, I can write you all of these plans, but it's going to take up a lot of your day and a lot of your time. So why don't we try and balance a little family time? What days do you like to do family stuff? Or maybe they're not already doing that. And I'm like, well, let's encourage that. Let's choose a game night where you have a nice free meal with the kids, with the wife, and your activity for that day is go for a little hike, go to the park, get your steps in, take your boy for a walk, go on a nice little mall day out or something like that, and encourage these little things that involves and includes family members. And that in its them knowing that they can still do that and stay on track and get the results, because some people are just terrible with time management and scheduling. So you can really schedule someone's full life. Like, okay, at this time you're going to take your kid to school, and then you're going to go for your little morning walk, and then you're going to do this, then you're going to train, then you're going to do this, and on this day at this time, it's family night. You know, Here's a bit of a guideline on how much to eat, but in general, go and have a nice night out with the family. It's date night, take the missus out, hire a babysitter, take the missus out. And you put these little things in place, and all of a sudden, this massively overwhelming thing of going for a prep is like, oh, well, actually, I can still involve my family, or maybe even involve my family into my life more than I had done before. So then you improve that family dynamic. And all of a sudden, that produces this way happier environment for people to continue their progress in. So, again, like you said, Ahmed, just ask questions about people, their families. A lot of coaches, what do you eat? When do you train? What do you do? And all of this. And there's no real further conversation.
Mhm.
Whereas I won't pry too much, but I'll ask, like, what does your day look like? What does your schedule look like? Who's involved? Who's a big part of your life? What, is your boss an asshole or are they a nice person? These little things, because a lot of these things you can kind of pick up patterns, and then you can relate with people a lot more. And I'll ask you guys a personal question as well. I think because being relatable in situations is massively important as a coach. At some point in your life, have you ever hit like real rock bottom, like real personal lows where you're like, God, you had to really learn a lot about yourself to get yourself back up? Like, I'm
Mm.
assuming you both probably have at some point gone through some really difficult times in your life and you've had to learn a lot about how to bounce back from that.
But yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like I'm still. I mean, I'm still younger. I'm still 23, so I'm still very new. But I mean, when I first moved to Los Angeles, LA, at like 19 or 20 years old, it was like the hard truth of learning. Okay, down here, I mean, my family was 6 or 7 hours away, but it was like, okay, down here, I know nobody, I have no family, I'm figuring things out on my own. Things don't go good, things go good, it's on me. And that for I mean, even still being down here, that's was definitely a super hard lesson to learn because, like, it was, like, definitely like that me versus the world mentality, you know? And again, climbing up from that, it was nothing super crazy bad that happened, but again, it's like all alone down here, figuring things out. And it was definitely, and it still is a climb of like figuring that out, you know, going from family friends to just starting all over. It's a climb, and it was challenging, you know, having those nights. Yeah. So
Massively challenging position to put yourself in. A lot of people will never even leave their family homes, let alone their hometowns, or step out of their
yeah.
comfort zone. So just having stepped out of your comfort zone and having to fend for yourself and figure out life, like, how do I make this work? Massive skills that you can impart on anyone, and personally myself, I've hit rock bottom many times, mentally, physically, financially, and there's one thing you just always impart on people is you just don't quit. You just cannot.
Of
The only
course,
thing
yeah.
you can do is not quit. And you have to have this "I'll figure it out" mentality. Whatever happens, I will figure it out. And then you give these people this perspective, this like, well, if you really think about it, what's the absolute worst that can happen? And in a lot
Yeah.
of scenarios and a lot of people's cases that they're stressing out about, it's not really that bad. So a lot of the time having that perspective, but some people are coming from really, really bad situations, but like
Yeah.
massive people recovering from addiction, huge
Big-
family losses, bankruptcy, financial breakdowns, probably a whole bunch of people with their houses burnt down right now in LA that are trying to figure out their lives and get that back on track. So having gone through some real life yourself, I think
Yeah.
is also a really key thing to look for when you're choosing a coach is ask a little bit about your coach. What have they been
Yeah.
through? Have they got their own story? Have they shared that? Have they learned from it? And are they are they imparting that onto clients as well? So, and I mean, Ahmed, I'm sure you've probably got some stories as well that's taught them a lot about life. Right?
Probably I'm the oldest one, right? I'm 36. So
I'm the same. We're the same age.
really, they're good.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel like a baby.
Don't let
So,
this
yeah.
baby face. This baby face
This is
fool you.
baby face.
This is just diet face.
Yeah. For me, because I started on my early time as I graduated from Faculty of Engineering, and my specialty was really a tough one during the college time. It was material science, and from that I started to love the chemistry, and then I progressed to something else afterwards to can just make that shift. But I started as an engineer, and then after that, I got married, and once I got married, I got a twin. So it was an early time for me to can have babies, and then I left all of that, and I came here to Dubai from Egypt, and then I moved places around the globe, like from country to another. But I settled here in Dubai from like 10 years, and during that time, I had some struggles in all ways, like financially, personally, and family wise, because I'm leaving my kids, and then I'm trying to sort out my goals, and that was always a stressful point for me to can just figure out how can I make myself in a better position for them. How can I be a good parent? I learned from my family. I learned from my father how he was growing me up, and how he taught me from one phase to another. I started to learn from the older people around me. And this is why probably I always tend to seem like talking like an old people, but this is something I really like to have the experience. I always sit with people that they are younger than me, older than me, and try to gather all the experiences, all the culture around the globe, like the Asian, the Westerns, the European, the Americans, and all the cultures around them. So I learn everything from everyone, and that can take your personal resilience, and can build up your personality in a different way. Like you cannot be fragile like others. You cannot be um, easy to get angry on people, easy to get caught in your thoughts, or you got the same ways as intrusive thoughts about people. You can have a grasp on everything very easy because your mind was trained to be analytical. So even within a conversation, you can pick up things that you can really know what's going on in the background with those people, how you can respond in a way that can save you from getting into troubles and things like that. It was always building out personalities. So if someone he had an easy life, they will always be fragile. They always feel like they are not meant to be a tough person. And the um, life experiments always bring up a big different story every single time. Like every year, it has its own stories, it has its own struggles, ups and downs, and that can build up a personality that it can help the tribes themselves. If you went through the personal problems, psychological problems, health problem, you'll be always investing more time to can dig deeper to know how to can mitigate that or how to can overcome that. And the person that sign up for your coaching is not only there for the knowledge about dieting, about training, or about even stuff that we do, but also for the experience that you got. So you can literally like warn them, don't do that. That can take you to a point that you won't be able to go back from it. don't do this drug, don't do this diet, don't go to this country. Or even you can give them some tips about countries that they can go to, how they can manage to stay there. Even from your connection, you can give them, some not even advices, but sometimes some push in their businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, these are all super important things that we do, I think, have a responsibility to impart on clients. And and that's again like to circle back round to prep. That's what prep will do for you as well. A good prep will teach you a lot
Mhm.
about yourself and a lot about
Yep.
life, and it will teach you a level of resilience that you didn't know you had, and that will carry over into the rest of your life for sure. But yeah, all of these things that come along with like working with people throughout a prep. I know we went a bit off topic, but I think
I
it's
think
an
that's great.
opportunity.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for listeners to learn a little bit more about us and our thoughts on how things, how we sort of approach things and our life experiences and things like that. And I think these are a lot of the things that are overlooked and not talked about enough when it comes to, you know, helping people in their lives, whatever their
Mhm.
goals might be.
Yeah. Yeah, and, the other thing too is, these are important too because a lot of people, I think, will look up to you as a coach and just as a person in general. I'm sure you guys, you get a lot of clients for they'll tell you, "Aaron, I've watched your videos for so long. I'm such a big fan. It's so great to work with you." And then when you kind of break down, to them, "Hey, I've had those moments before where I've been in life and I've been totally screwed, rock bottom, and I had to dig my way out." I think that, allows them to relate more and see that, "Hey, I'm not the only one who's going through it." Because a lot of times, you see people on social media and you think they're kind of not even perfect's not even the word to say, but they're kind of untouchable and they're good to go and they're just rolling through life like there's no issues. But then again, when you can see that that person you've been following on social media, who has the following and who has the great physique, has the same struggles as you are, it really allows you to come back, relate, and better kind of, internalize things and say, okay, if he goes through it, then, it's normal for me to be going through it. I'm not the only person going through it. So I think it's very valuable, and I think we did go off topic, but I think that's a very, very valuable conversation, um, to have. Getting a little bit back, so Aaron, we'll touch real quick, finally, on cardio during a prep. How should we structure that? And then after that, we'll transition to the gray area stuff that we're not going to have YouTube on YouTube. We'll put that on behind the paywall just for the simple sake that YouTube is so weird about stuff, and that way we can talk more freely about it. So really quick, what's your stance on cardio during a prep? I know, again, that's another thing where I feel like there's the trope of, okay, I got to wake up and do 3 hours of cardio. Do you think that's necessary? Do you think it depends on the client? Which I'm sure the cardio intensity does, but how do you kind of put that into their protocols and their plans?
So I like a baseline of cardio purely for a couple of reasons. One, for cardiovascular health. Two, structure and routine. Structure and routine in a prep is key. And having something as simple as starting your day every single day with a little 10-minute walk around the block sets the tone. And having those structures in place, I think, are really good tools to have. Now, as far as how much it impacts a prep, as far as fat loss is concerned, I think it's a tool that can be leveraged. Again, there's always going to be, yes, individual needs analysis all the time. There's a couple of things to consider. One, how does it affect the physique? How does it affect the buildup of fatigue? And are you implementing too much cardio too early, which I see a lot, where you can still be pulling food back. There's still plenty of food to pull, and it's not going to affect performance. Pulling more food in a deficit is going to be more effective for fat loss than cardio will be, in my opinion, because you can leverage exactly which macros you push and pull, and that can have a direct correlation into the individual's needs for not just performance, but from a fat loss point of view as well, based on their genetics and what you know about them already. So I would keep a baseline of cardio in for most people. I do personally like it daily, just for that routine. But I will spread the load across the week so it's manageable based on that individual schedule, what they have available for time wise. Try to keep it away from training. The style of cardio, if I am really wanting to improve someone's cardiovascular health, there's a good need for me to do that. Then I'll probably be implementing things a little bit more beneficial towards that. Some high intensity interval training. A 10-minute high-intensity interval session on a speed bike or a treadmill, fantastic for cardio health. 20 minutes slow-paced walking on a treadmill is doing nothing for your cardio health. It's just habit and burning a few calories maybe, but it's more that low-intensity, steady-state cardio, I think, is a good way to create a little bit more of a deficit without accumulating too much fatigue when you cannot pull any more food away. That's when I'd start implementing that. And how much and the duration of that would be just purely based on how much is needed to reach those body fat loss goals week to week and still get the job done. The idea of like, well, 12 weeks out, you have to start doing an hour of cardio every day. Well, why? You still got 4,000 calories to play with. Do you have to do that much cardio? Is that cardio going to be having a negative impact on that person's recovery? Is it sometimes it has a massive negative impact on the physique. Whereas sometimes the opposite can be there as well. Some people just love cardio. They love cardio, So it's like, well, they feel better, they look better with more food and more cardio rather than less food and a little less cardio, whatever balance you decide to go with. So again, individual needs, communication, figure out what works for that individual.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest traps I see people fall into oftentimes is trying to, especially on prep, they try to like out cardio. They'll try to do 2 hours of cardio a day. And what you'll fit, again, if you may be an outlier with this, but what I've seen with a lot of people, what happens is you go and you do that hour and a half, 2 hours of cardio, and your recovery goes down, your body craves more food, your appetite goes up, and then you get caught in this loop of like, okay, if you would have just lowered your calories or eaten more intelligently, you could have avoided that. Your recovery would be much better. And then you wouldn't be craving a bunch of food because you just burned all those calories off. Right. So I always tell people, like I said, like you were saying, like, I think just having some structured cardio is perfect. You shouldn't need to go crazy with it. Again, maybe there's an outlier person, of course, who would, but most people don't need to do the 3 hours of cardio. Yeah. I've seen, again, if diet's good, that I think should be the main thing that we should focus on when it comes to that. But I think, I mean, we've recorded now here for the YouTube audience over an hour of content, very valuable stuff. We'll break it down with chapters so you guys can easily follow through. The rest of this podcast, like I said, will be over at my website, biohackingyou.com, where we will be going into Aaron's kind of PED and fat burner peptide strategies during prep. That's, again, will be the more gray area stuff that we can't talk about on YouTube because it will be very detailed. So if you want to go see that, it'll be over on that website. But if you're stopping here, thank you guys again for joining us. And we will see you guys over there if you'll be joining us.
I like to be educated, but I'm so frustrated.